I found out my son had moved halfway across the country, the same way you'd mentioned switching laundry detergent casual. Throwaway, like it didn't matter at all. My name is Isaiah Washington. I'm 67 years old, and for 34 years, I worked as an aircraft maintenance technician for Southwest Airlines right here in Phoenix, Arizona. Every morning, without fail, I was up at 4:30. I'd climb into my old Ford F-150, the one I bought cash after saving for 2 years when I first got married, and I'd head out to Sky Harbor to inspect engines, landing gear, hydraulic lines, everything that kept those planes safely in the air. It wasn't glamorous work. It was backbreaking, high-stakes labor. One missed bolt, one overlooked leak, and people could die. That's why I never cut corners, never called in sick unless I was flat on my back, and never turned down overtime when they needed me on weekends or holidays. I married young 24 years old to Loretta Mae Jenkins. She was a beautiful woman from Memphis, who I met at a summer revival tent meeting. She worked as a school cafeteria manager, one of those women who could make institutional food taste like home cooking, with just a little seasoning and a lot of love. We had 3 children. Deandra, who's 41 now, Tasha, who's 38, and Brandon, my youngest, who's 35. I raised all 3 of them on honest work and black pride. We never went hungry. There was always fried chicken or pork chops on the table. They always had new shoes for the first day of school and coats for the winter. They had everything they needed and most of what they wanted. Loretta passed away 8 years ago. It was one of those strokes that comes out of nowhere and takes everything with it. She was frying bacon for breakfast when she collapsed right there on the kitchen floor. I was out front washing the truck. By the time I came inside and found her, she was already gone. I buried my queen with these 2 hands trembling, and ever since then, this house has felt too big, too quiet, too full of ghosts. But I kept going, because that's what Loretta would have expected. I kept waking up early, making my coffee strong and black, keeping the yard neat, watering the roses she planted along the fence. And most importantly, I kept trying to hold this family together. I called the kids every week, sent them texts with Bible verses or jokes, invited them over for Sunday dinners. Tasha lived down in San Antonio and visited when her work schedule allowed. Brandon had moved to Houston and was harder to pin down. But Deandra lived right here in Phoenix, less than 30 minutes away in Scottsdale. You're about to understand why this story cut me so deep. But first, if you're feeling the story, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Voices of Our Elders channel. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. There's a new story here every single day, and every one I tell comes from the heart, from lived experience, from hard-earned wisdom. I truly appreciate anyone who takes the time to listen. Now, I'm about to tell you how a man who sacrificed everything for his family discovered in the end that he was just a burden everyone wanted to forget. I was born in 1958 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My daddy worked for the railroad, laying track for the Southern Line. My mama took in sewing and alterations, working her fingers raw to keep us fed when my daddy's lungs started failing from all that coal dust and diesel smoke. We were 6 kids total, and I was the oldest boy. I learned early that nobody was going to hand you anything in this life. I studied hard, got my certification in aircraft mechanics from a vocational program at the community college. I was a good student. I loved figuring out how things worked, taking apart the neighbor's lawnmower and putting it back together, fixing the church van when it broke down, helping my daddy with whatever tools he had left. When I finished my certification in 1977, I got a job at a small repair shop in Memphis. That's where I met Loretta one Sunday after morning service. She had eyes that could light up a dark room and a laugh that made you forget your troubles. We courted for 2 years. I saved every dime I could, skip lunches, walked instead of driving, didn't buy anything I didn't absolutely need so I could take her to the movies, buy her flowers on her birthday, and save up for a ring. When I proposed to her, I had enough money saved for a modest diamond and a down payment on a small house in Phoenix. The city was growing fast because of the tech boom and the airline industry, and there were jobs out there for a man willing to work. We got married in January of 1981. Loretta wore a cream-colored dress her mama had sewn by hand, and she looked like an angel walking down that aisle. The reception was simple, held in the church fellowship hall, with fried fish, potato salad, sheet cake, and sweet tea. We didn't have money for a DJ, so my cousin played his guitar, and we sang hymns and Motown late into the night. Those were the happiest days of my life, bar none. Not long after we moved to Phoenix, I landed a job with Southwest Airlines. I started at the absolute bottom aircraft cleaner, the guy who scrubbed the lavatories and vacuumed the aisles after the red-eye flights. But it was Southwest, a solid company with good benefits and steady paychecks. I woke up at 4:30 every morning, rode 2 city buses because I didn't have a car yet, and clocked in at the hangar at 6 o'clock sharp. I was never late, not once. My supervisor, a tough old white guy named Mr. Patterson, told me one day, "Isaiah, you show up like clockwork." That's rare these days. Keep it up. I started low crawling under fuselages, checking tire pressure, cleaning tools, organizing parts, but I watched everything. I paid close attention to how the senior techs diagnosed problems, how they troubleshot systems, how they worked efficiently without rushing. I asked questions during breaks. I studied the technical manuals at home after Loretta and the kids went to bed. Within 6 months, I got promoted to junior technician. Within 3 years, I was a certified A and P mechanic. Within 10 years, I was a lead technician supervising a crew of 8 guys. The work was hard and dangerous. I worked with jet fuel, high-pressure hydraulics, and components that could crush you if you weren't careful. I saw a guy lose 3 fingers in a compressor. I saw another guy get burned by hydraulic fluid that was hot enough to melt skin. I learned to be methodical, cautious, and uncompromising. When I signed off on a job, I checked it twice, then checked it again. My crew used to complain that I was too picky, too slow, too much of a perfectionist. But in 34 years at Southwest, not a single plane that passed through my hands ever had a maintenance-related incident. Not one. Loretta supported me through all of it. When I came home exhausted, smelling like jet fuel and sweat, she had dinner waiting: collard greens, cornbread, baked chicken, black-eyed peas. The house was always clean. The kids' homework was always done. She worked full-time at the school and still managed everything at home without ever complaining. Deandra was born in 1984. Tasha came in 1987. Brandon in 1990. Watching those 3 grow up gave me the strength to endure anything. I did everything for my children. I bought a bigger house with a backyard so they could run around and play. I worked double shifts to pay for private school tuition, school supplies, and basketball shoes. Deandra got his degree in business management. Tasha became a registered nurse. Brandon studied electrical engineering. I was so proud when I saw them walk across that stage in their caps and gowns, degrees in hand. When Deandra married Keisha Thompson in 2010, I gave him a fully paid-off townhouse in North Scottsdale as a wedding gift. It wasn't huge, but it was in a safe neighborhood with good schools nearby. I took out a personal loan and paid it off over 10 years, working overtime every chance I got. Loretta worried about the debt, but I told her, "Baby, our son can't start his life paying rent to some landlord. It's our duty to give him a foundation." For Tasha, When she got married in 2012, I gave her the down payment for a house in San Antonio. For Brandon, who stayed single longer, I opened a savings account and put money aside every month. But life, my friend, has a way of twisting the knife. The more I gave, the less I seemed to get back. When Loretta died in 2017, Deandra was the one who showed up the least at the funeral. He arrived late, barely stayed an hour, mumbling something about work obligations and needing to get back. Kaisha didn't come at all. She sent a text saying she wasn't feeling well. At the time, I swallowed my hurt and told myself, people grieve in different ways. After the burial, the house felt hollow, empty, like all the air had been sucked out. I started calling the kids more often. I needed to hear voices, needed to know I still had family. Tasha always picked up, asked how I was doing, told me she loved me. Brandon answered sometimes, didn't answer other times. But Deandra started pulling away. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts took 3, 4, 5 days to get a response. I kept trying, kept inviting them over for Sunday dinner, kept offering help whenever they needed it, kept sending money when I knew they were struggling. But slowly, I started to see a pattern. In 2019, I retired. Southwest gave me a plaque and a small ceremony with my coworkers. I thought I'd finally have more time to spend with the grandkids. Deandra had 2 young kids, Jaden and Aliyah, but visits were rare. It was in 2022 that I discovered something that left a bitter taste in my mouth. The company offered an extended healthcare plan for retirees, and as a senior technician, I had the option to include immediate family members. I had enrolled Loretta when she was alive, and after she passed, HR called me asking if I wanted to add anyone else. I asked if I could add my son and his family. They said yes. I filled out the paperwork for Deandra, Kaisha, Jaden, and Aliyah. I never told them about it. I didn't think I needed to. I just did it because he was my son, and I wanted them to have security, to be able to see doctors, get checkups, have surgeries without worrying about crushing medical bills. It was a top-tier private plan that covered Banner Health Phoenix, Mayo Clinic, the whole network. Time passed. The calls got colder. The invitations were turned down. When they did come over for Sunday dinner, which was maybe twice a year, they barely stayed long enough to finish eating. Kaisha spent the whole time on her phone. Deandra talked about his job, complained about his boss, griped about traffic, but never once asked how I was doing. The grandkids ran wild through the house, knocked over picture frames, spilled juice on the carpet, and nobody corrected them. I cleaned up everything after they left, smiling to myself because at least I'd had company, even if it felt like I was invisible. I started noticing changes in Deandra. He looked thinner, stressed, like he wasn't sleeping. I asked if everything was okay. He said, yeah, just busy at work. Kaisha mentioned once that they were thinking about relocating, looking for better opportunities somewhere else. I said, if you need help, son, you know I'm here. She smiled but didn't respond. It was December of 2024 when everything started to fall apart. I called Deandra and invited him to spend Christmas with me. I'd already bought a ham, sweet potato pie, all the fixings. He said they were spending Christmas with Kaisha's family. I suggested New Year's then. He said they were traveling. I choked down my disappointment and wished them happy holidays. I spent Christmas and New Year's alone. I watched old Western reruns on TV. I ate the ham I'd cooked. I tried not to cry. Tasha called me from San Antonio, and we talked for a long time. She said, Daddy, I wish I could be there, but my in-laws are insisting we come here. I told her I understood, but inside, my heart was breaking. January 2025 came in cold and empty. I decided to make one last effort. I called Deandra on a Wednesday afternoon, and invited him and his family over for Sunday dinner. He hesitated, but finally said yes. I was so happy I could have danced. I went to the grocery store and bought everything barbecue ribs, mac and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, peach cobbler, the whole spread Deandra used to love when he was a kid. I cleaned the entire house top to bottom, set the dining room table with the good china, put fresh flowers in a vase. Saturday morning, I went back to the store to get soda and ice cream for the kids. When I got back home, my phone rang. It was Deandra. I thought he was calling to confirm what time to come over, but the voice that came through the line was flat, distant, cold. Hey, Pops. So we moved to Dallas last week. Forgot to mention it. Everything happened real quick. I felt my whole body go numb. The grocery bags slipped from my hands and hit the floor. A carton of ice cream rolled across the kitchen tile. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, unable to process what I'd just heard. What do you mean, son? I managed to ask, my voice shaking. You moved? Yeah, Pops, got a job offer in Dallas. Real good opportunity. We had to jump on it fast. Sorry, I didn't tell you sooner, but it was just ... You know, hectic. Hectic. Like I was an afterthought. Like telling your own father you were moving halfway across the country was something you could just forget to do. I took a deep breath. I felt anger, sadness, betrayal, humiliation, all of it crashing down on me at once. But I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of hearing me break. All right, son. Good luck with everything. My voice came out steady, but my chest felt like it had been cracked open. Thanks. Pops, I'll call you soon. And he hung up. I stood there in the hallway, phone in my hand, staring at the dining room where the table was set with love, where the food was waiting to be cooked, where I had hoped, one more time, to feel like I mattered. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to punch a hole in the wall. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I walked over to the filing cabinet in my home office. I pulled out a folder I'd kept from a conversation with Southwest's HR department months earlier. I sat down at my computer, opened my email, and typed a short message to the benefits coordinator. I attached a signed form, my removal request from the extended family health care plan. I hit send and closed the laptop. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it because I was done. Done being treated like I didn't matter. Done giving without even getting a phone call back. Done being remembered only when they needed something. Deandra and Kaisha had no idea it was me providing their health care, that their kids were seeing top-tier specialists because of my retirement benefits. They were about to find out the hard way, and I didn't feel an ounce of guilt about it. After I hung up that phone on that January Saturday, I sat in my recliner for hours. The house was dead silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock Loretta's father had given us as a wedding present. Tick-tock, tick-tock, each second hammering home the reality. My son had moved to Dallas and forgot to tell me. I looked at the dining room table, set so carefully, the embroidered tablecloth Loretta had made herself, the plates I'd washed by hand, the crystal glasses we only brought out for special occasions. I slowly got up, walked to the kitchen, and stared at the ribs marinating in the fridge, the mac and cheese ready to be baked, the collard greens soaking in the pot. Everything prepared with love. All of it worthless now. I didn't cry at that moment. The sadness had hardened into something else, something cold and final. It was like a door slamming shut inside my chest. For days, I replayed that conversation in my head. Forgot to mention it. They forgot. Like forgetting your own father was normal, acceptable, no big deal. I tried to pinpoint exactly when things went wrong. Maybe it was after I gave Deandra that townhouse. I remember a few months after I handed him the keys, he mentioned to Loretta that the neighborhood wasn't as upscale as he'd hoped, that he wanted something closer to downtown Scottsdale. Loretta was hurt and told me quietly, but I brushed it off. Kids always want more, I said. But deep down, they're grateful. Was he really grateful? I started remembering other moments I'd pushed aside at the time. Like Father's Day 2018, the first one without Loretta. I'd waited all day for a visit, a call, something. Deandra sent me a text at 11:47 p.m. Happy Father's Day, Pops. Been swamped. Sorry. Swamped. Always swamped. Always too busy for his father. Or my 65th birthday in 2023. I'd mentioned the week before that I wanted to have a little cookout, just family. He said he'd try to make it. The day came. I called him at 3 in the afternoon to confirm. No answer. At 6 o'clock, I got a text. Can't make it, Pops. Kaisha's not feeling good. I ate the barbecue alone, looking at the empty chairs around the patio table. And there was that time, Jaden, my oldest grandson fell off his bike and split his chin open. Deandra called me panicking, asking me to pick them up and take them to the emergency room because his car wouldn't start. I dropped everything, drove across town, picked them up, took them to Banner Health, and sat in that waiting room for 3 hours until they stitched Jaden up. When we left, Kaisha barely said thank you. Deandra mumbled a quick thanks, Pops, and spent the entire drive back staring at his phone. They only remembered me when they needed something. But I'd swallowed it all, made excuses for every slight, every absence, every cold shoulder. They have their own lives, I told myself. They're adults. They have responsibilities. I kept convincing myself it was normal for children to drift away. But deep down, it hurt. It hurt like hell that 1 week passed after that phone call. I tried to stick to my routine, waking up early, making coffee, watering the roses, watching the morning news, but everything felt pointless. Why keep this house clean if nobody visited? Why tend the garden if nobody noticed? Why wake up early if I had nowhere to go and nothing to do? It was a Thursday afternoon when the mom really went off. I was in the kitchen pouring myself some iced tea when the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello, is this Mr. Isaiah Washington? A woman's voice, professional and polite. Yes, speaking, I replied. Mr. Washington, this is Banner Health Scottsdale. I'm calling because we received our request to schedule back surgery for Mr. Deandre Washington. But when we went to verify the insurance coverage, it showed as inactive. Do you know anything about this? My heart started pounding. I knew exactly what had happened. The cancellation had gone through. Yes, ma'am, I said, keeping my voice calm. The coverage was canceled because I understand, Mr. Washington. It's just that the appointment was scheduled 3 weeks before the cancellation, and the surgery is set for 10 days from now. I'll need to contact the patient and inform him that he'll have to pay out of pocket or find alternative coverage. The procedure is approximately $18,000. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but I didn't waver. Yes, you can do that, ma'am. Thank you for calling. And I hung up. I stood there in the kitchen, iced tea forgotten on the counter. So that was it. Deandra was getting surgery, expensive surgery, and hadn't even told me. Hadn't called to say, Pops, I'm having a procedure done. Hadn't asked for my opinion, hadn't included me in anything. But he expected me to foot the bill without even knowing about it. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Deandre's number. I thought about not answering, but I did. Hello, I said flatly. Pops, what's this about you canceling our health insurance? Deandre's voice was loud, almost yelling. The hospital just called saying my surgery has to be paid out of pocket or canceled. I took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. Deandra, did you know that insurance came from me? I asked calmly. Silence on the other end. Long, heavy silence. What do you mean came from you? He asked, his voice lower now, confused. The health plan you, Kaisha, and the kids have been using for the past 3 years is a benefit from my Southwest retirement package. I added you as dependents. You never knew that? Another silence. Longer this time. Didn't you ever wonder how you had such good coverage without paying a dime? Didn't it seem strange that you could go to Banner Mayo Clinic, see specialists without a wait, get surgeries approved without hassle? I thought it was through Kaisha's job, he stammered. It wasn't. It was me. And it was free for you because I paid for it not with money, but with 34 years of my life at Southwest. And I chose to share that benefit with you. But Pops, why would you cancel it? I need this surgery. My back is killing me. I can barely walk some days. I felt the anger rising, hot and fierce. Why did I cancel it? Are you seriously asking me why I canceled it? Pops, I don't understand. You moved to Dallas and forgot to tell me. I exploded. You just up and left and treated me like I was a piece of trash you could toss aside without a second thought. Pops, I told you it was an accident. Everything happened so fast. Fast? I almost shouted. You had time to find a new job, sign a lease, pack up your whole house, enroll the kids in a new school, but you didn't have 5 minutes to call your father and tell him you were leaving the state? When were you planning to tell me, Deandra? When? After I died and you read about it in the obituary? Silence again. I was shaking with rage, with pain, with everything bottled up inside. Look, I admit I messed up, he said, switching to a defensive tone. But canceling the insurance like that is petty. You're putting your grandkids' health at risk. That was the final straw, petty? I shouted into the phone. You want to talk about petty? I gave you a house when you got married. I paid for your college. I helped you every single time you needed it. I gave you my sweat, my time, my entire life. And you? You barely called. You barely visited. And when you did visit, it was because you wanted something, wasn't it, son? Every single time. You only remembered I existed when you needed something. And I got tired, Deandra. I got tired of being treated like an ATM, like a favor service, like anything but your father. You're exaggerating, exaggerating. I let out a bitter laugh. Last Father's Day, you sent me a text after midnight. You didn't show up for my birthday. You chose to spend Christmas with your in-laws and didn't even invite me. Now you move to another state and forget to tell me. And you think I'm exaggerating? Pops, I have my own life, my own. Don't I deserve a minimum of consideration? Of respect? I cut him off. Am I just a bank for you to make withdrawals from when you need something? Is that it? It's not like that. And what is it, Deandra? Explain it to me. Explain why you treat me like this. Explain why I don't even deserve a phone call telling me you're leaving. Silence. A silence that said everything. Pops, look, he began, his voice barely a whisper now. We really need that insurance. The surgery is important. I don't have $18,000 just lying around. Please reconsider. Please. He said please, but it wasn't a son asking his father. It was someone who'd been caught off guard and was scared of losing something valuable. Deandra, I said, exhausted now, the anger giving way to deep sadness. You're not asking me as a son. You're asking because you need it. And you know the difference. A son asks with love, with respect, with consideration. You're asking because it's convenient. Are you doing this for revenge? He asked, anger creeping back into his voice. It's not revenge, Deandra. It's consequence. Consequence for your choices. Consequence for treating me like I'm disposable. Pops, the kids, The kids will be fine on Medicaid or whatever federal plan you can get, I interrupted. It's not ideal, but they won't die. And you'll have to figure it out just like millions of Americans do every day. I can't believe you're doing this, he said, his voice full of disbelief. I couldn't believe it either when you called me to say you'd moved to Dallas and forgot to tell me, I replied. Now we're even. And I hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, my whole body trembling. I had exploded. I had yelled. I had let out years of bottled-up hurt. And you know what I felt? Not guilt. Relief, but the story didn't end there. 3 days later, Kaisha called me. I almost didn't answer, but I did. Mr. Washington, you need to reconsider this decision. She started without even saying hello. Deandra is in terrible pain. He needs this surgery. Kaisha, this is between my son and me, I replied. But you're hurting all of us. The kids have doctor appointments scheduled. I have a root canal scheduled. We depended on that insurance. Depended, she'd said. That confirmed everything. You depended on something you didn't even know I was providing, I said. You used it without gratitude, without even knowing where it came from. And now you're calling to collect. You're obligated to help your grandkids. She shouted. I'm obligated to nothing, I said firmly. I chose to help because I wanted to. And now I choose to stop. It's that simple. You're a selfish, bitter old man throwing a tantrum because your son went to live his own life. That hurt. It hurt more than I expected. But I didn't back down. If that's what you think, then there's no point in continuing this conversation, I said. Have a good life in Dallas. And I hung up again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering if I'd gone too far, if I was being the bitter old man Kaisha said I was. But then I remembered the dinner I'd prepared, the unanswered calls, the forgotten birthdays, Loretta's funeral where Deandra barely stayed an hour. And most of all, I remembered that phone call. Moved to Dallas last week. Forgot to mention it. No, I hadn't gone too far. I had simply stopped accepting crumbs. I had stopped letting myself be treated as disposable the following week. I got a text from Tasha. She was worried. She said Deandra had called her crying, saying I'd abandoned him. Abandoned him like I was the villain. I called Tasha, and she picked up immediately. Daddy, what happened? She asked, concern in her voice. I told her everything. The move without notice. The canceled insurance. The years of neglect, of being remembered only when they needed something. My voice shook, but I didn't cry. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Daddy, she finally said, I didn't know you felt that way. Nobody knew, baby, because I kept it all inside. But there comes a point when you just can't anymore. The insurance. I didn't know it came from you, she confessed. Nobody knew because I didn't think I needed to say anything. I thought actions spoke louder than words. But apparently they didn't. Daddy, look, I understand you're hurt, but Deandra really needs that surgery. Isn't there any way to reconsider? No, Tasha, this isn't about the surgery. It's about respect. It's about being treated like a father, not like a favor bank. She sighed. I know, Daddy, and Deandra was wrong. But nothing, I interrupted gently. If he needs the surgery, he'll find a way. I found a way for everything in my life without anyone rescuing me. He can too. We hung up shortly after. Tasha said she understood, but was going to try to get Deandra to call me and really apologize. But he never called. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of complete silence. No text, no call, nothing. It was like I'd ceased to exist again. And that's when I realized the hardest truth of all. They didn't miss me. They missed what I could do for them. They missed the insurance, the favors, the financial help. But they didn't miss me, Isaiah, their father, their grandfather. And that realization, it was a Tuesday in February when everything shifted again. I was out in the yard trimming the rose bushes when my neighbor, Clarence Johnson, a retired postal worker who'd lived next door for over 15 years, walked over with a strange look on his face. "Isaiah, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, Clarence. Come on up. I'll make us some coffee," I replied. We sat on the porch. He seemed uncomfortable, stirring his cup without drinking. "Isaiah, I need to tell you something," he started. "But I don't know if I should." "Speak your mind, Clarence. We're both too old for games." He took a deep breath. "Last week I was at that BBQ spot on Camelback Road, and I saw your son Deandra. I didn't know he still lived around here." My heart tightened. "He doesn't. He moved to Dallas." "Well, he must have been back visiting then. He was with his wife Kaisha, and they were arguing loud enough that half the restaurant could hear. I didn't want to listen, but they weren't exactly keeping their voices down." "What were they saying?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "Isaiah, they were talking about you," he said quietly. "Kaisha was saying you were a stubborn old man, throwing a fit over nothing. And that now they had to pay for surgery out of pocket because of your pride." Deandra agreed. "Said you'd always been hard-headed, and it wasn't worth trying to reason with you because you hold grudges." Clarence's words hit me like a gut punch. But he kept going. And then Kaisha said something that really bothered me. She said, "Let him sit in that big house alone. When he gets older and needs help, we'll deal with it then. For now, we just ignore him until he realizes he was wrong." I sat there in silence. Clarence looked at me with sympathy. "Isaiah, I'm sorry I overheard all that, and I'm sorry to be the one to tell you. But I thought you deserved to know what they're saying behind your back." "Thank you, Clarence," I managed to say. "I appreciate you telling me." After he left, I stayed on that porch for hours. So that was it. They hadn't actually moved yet. They were still sorting things out here in Phoenix, probably finalizing the move, and they hadn't even thought to stop by. And on top of that, they were bad-mouthing me in public, calling me stubborn, hard-headed, saying they'd leave me alone until I realized I was wrong. But who was really wrong here? That's when something crystallized inside me. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was clarity. Absolute clarity that I'd made the right decision. And even more clarity that I needed to protect myself going forward. I remembered something Benjamin Cross, the Southwest benefits attorney, had told me when I went to process the insurance cancellation. He'd given me his card and said, "Isaiah, if you ever need guidance on family or financial matters, give me a call. I've worked with you for years, and I respect you. Don't let anyone take advantage of you." The next day, I called Mr. Cross and made an appointment. When I arrived at his office, he greeted me warmly. "Isaiah, good to see you. Have a seat." I sat down and got straight to the point. I told him everything the move without notice. The demands to keep paying for insurance, the cancellation, the conversation Clarence overheard at the restaurant. Mr. Cross listened carefully, nodding occasionally. "Isaiah, I'm going to be straight with you," he said when I finished. "Stories like yours are more common than you'd think. Adult children who distance themselves from their parents but still expect financial support, then complain when the support stops." "Mr. Cross, I don't want revenge," I explained, "but I want to protect myself. I want to make sure that if I get sick or need help in the future, they can't put me somewhere against my will or make decisions for me without my consent." He nodded. "I understand completely, and you're smart to think about this now while you're healthy and sharp. Here's what I recommend." He pulled out some documents. "First, we'll create a durable power of attorney, naming someone you trust to make medical and financial decisions if you become incapacitated. From what you've told me, that should probably be your daughter, Tasha. That works, I agreed. Second, we'll draft a will that clearly states how you want your assets distributed. You have the right to allocate your estate as you see fit. You can leave DeAndre the legal minimum required by Arizona law and distribute the rest to Tasha, Brandon, or even Charity if you want. I want to do that, I said firmly. Third, we'll file a declaration of competency with a notary, where you explicitly state that you're of sound mind, that you're making these decisions freely, and that any future attempt to claim you are incompetent will be easily refuted. Perfect. We spent the whole afternoon getting everything in order. Mr. Cross was patient, explaining every document and every clause. When I left his office at sunset, I felt calmer, more protected, more in control of my own life. But the real turning point came a week later. I'd gone to the bank when I ran into Sister Gloria Henderson, an old friend of Loretta's from church. She hugged me warmly. Isaiah, long time no see. How are you holding up? Getting by, Sister Gloria. And you? Oh, you know me, still kicking. But listen, I need to tell you something. She lowered her voice. Last week I saw your son Deandra at the grocery store. I went over to say hello, ask how the family was doing. And you know what he told me? My stomach clenched. What did he say? He told me you'd been getting forgetful, that he was worried about your mental state, that you'd gotten confused and canceled some important documents for no good reason. She looked me in the eye. Isaiah, he's spreading rumors that you're not all there mentally. I felt my blood pressure spike. Sister Gloria, my mind is sharper than ever. What I canceled was health insurance they were using without even knowing it came from me. I canceled it because I wanted to, because I was tired of being used. I figured it was something like that, she said, squeezing my hand. That's why I'm telling you, because if he's saying this around town, he's trying to make you look incompetent. And you need to protect yourself, Isaiah. I thanked Sister Gloria and left the bank with my head spinning. So Deandra was trying to paint me as senile to invalidate my decisions, probably hoping to reverse the insurance cancellation or set the stage to challenge anything else I did. But he didn't count on one thing. I just filed a declaration of competency with a notary, and I had plenty of witnesses who could confirm I was perfectly sound. I immediately called Mr. Cross and told him what I'd discovered. Isaiah, that's called defamation, he explained. He's trying to create a false narrative that you're incompetent. But with the documents we filed last week, any attempt to have you declared incapacitated will fall flat. Mr. Cross, I want to do one more thing. I want to file a police report for defamation. He's spreading lies about my mental health, and that's damaging my reputation. We can absolutely do that. It'll create a record, and if he continues, we can pursue legal action. The next day, I went to the police station with Mr. Cross. I brought Clarence and Sister Gloria as witnesses, and I filed a formal complaint. The officer was respectful, took down everything, and gave me a copy of the report. Mr. Washington, he said, you're doing the right thing. Unfortunately, cases of adult children slandering their parents to try to gain control of assets happen more often than they should. When I walked out of that police station, I felt powerful, not with revenge, but with dignity. I had taken back control of my life. The months that followed brought real change. I sold the big house. It had become a museum of memories I didn't need anymore, and bought a smaller condo in a modern complex with security and a community center. It was perfect for me. 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking the desert, less to clean, lower expenses, less loneliness echoing through empty rooms. Tasha helped me move. She and her husband drove up from San Antonio for the weekend. At the end of the day, we sat on my new balcony with cold beers, and she said, "Daddy, I'm proud of you. A lot of people would have stayed stuck. Those words meant everything. Brandon started calling more too, checking in every week. He told me he'd also felt neglected by Deandra over the years, criticized and compared. When he saw me stand up for myself, it gave him the courage to set his own boundaries. Tasha, Brandon, and I formed a new family dynamic, one based on mutual respect, real presence, and genuine love. They visit regularly because they want to, not because they have to. They call to chat, not to ask for favors. They include me in their lives. And Deandra? He disappeared. After the legal proceedings, he went back to Dallas. He tried calling once, months later, but I didn't answer. He sent a text apologizing, saying he'd made mistakes, that he wanted to talk. But it was too late. I'd closed that door and locked it. It wasn't lack of love. It was self-preservation. Tasha told me later that Deandra and Kaisha got divorced. The stress of everything, the surgery he had to pay for out of pocket, the mounting debts, the legal issues destroyed their marriage. He's living alone now in a small apartment, seeing his kids every other weekend. When I heard that, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt a passing sadness, like watching something that was once beautiful crumble beyond repair. Today, at 67, I live a peaceful life. I still wake up early because my body's used to it. I make my coffee, read the paper, and go down to the community room where some other retirees play dominoes every morning. I've made new friends, real friends who respect me. Twice a month, Tasha visits with her kids. My grandkids know me, hug me, call me Grandpa with real affection. We bake cookies together, watch movies, talk about school. It's the relationship I wish I could have had with Jaden and Alalia. But you can't force what isn't there. Brandon visits whenever he has time off. We go fishing at Lake Pleasant, something we hadn't done since he was young. We sit by the water with our lines in and talk about life, choices, regrets. He always thanks me for being an example of strength. Financially, I'm comfortable. My Southwest pension is solid. The money from selling the house is invested. I don't need much. And best of all, nobody's draining me anymore. Some days I look at old photos of Deandra as a boy, smiling in my arms, and I feel a pang in my chest. I wonder what could have been different. But then I remember, raising children doesn't come with instructions. You do your best with what you have. And if it doesn't turn out how you expected, it's not necessarily your fault. People ask if I miss him, if I've thought about forgiving him, giving him another chance. And I answer honestly, yes, I forgave him. I forgave him because holding on to anger only hurt me. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean opening the door to be walked over again. Forgiving means accepting what happened, learning from it, and moving forward protected. I learned that a father's love can't be so unconditional that it turns you into a doormat. That respect is a two-way street. That family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who cares, who's present. Tasha and Brandon are my family. My friends here at the complex are my family. Clarence, who warned me about that restaurant conversation, is more family than many blood relatives. And I learned, most importantly, that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. Never too late to say no. Never too late to stand up and demand the respect you deserve. I'm really glad you stayed with me through this story. If it touched you, hit that like button and subscribe to Barnard Stories. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your city. I post a new story every single day. And if you want to support the channel, any small contribution helps keep these stories coming. 2 more powerful stories will pop up on your screen next. Choose whichever one speaks to you. Thanks for listening, and remember,